One thing, the typing's a little bigger for everybody. So. All right. With that, I think we're all set. Mrs. Tyler, again, thank you for your help whenever you're ready.
Today is June 11th, 2018. Time is 11:32 a.m. on the record. All right, it is June the 11th, 2018. The time is approximately 11:31 a.m. We're here at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. We're here by agreement of counsel and on order of the court to take the deposition of Dr. Chadwick Wright. Dr. Wright's a witness for the state in the case of State of Ohio versus Anthony Kirkland, and his name has been provided in discovery in that case, which number is B0901629. Also, defense counsel has been provided with Dr. Wright's curriculum vitae and a report of an exam that he did on Anthony Kirkland back in October of 2017 at this facility at the request of Dr. Wu. The purpose of the deposition here today is to perpetuate Dr. Wright's testimony so that it can be used at trial, given his busy schedule here at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. In addition to Dr. Wright, I want to indicate who's present as far as parties in the case. Here, Rick Gibson, Chief Assistant Prosecutor in Hamilton County. Rich Wendell and Tim Kutcher are here representing the defendant, Anthony Kirkland. We have a videographer and a stenographer to take all this down. And we have representatives here of the Wexner Medical Center present as well. The defendant, Anthony Kirkland, is specifically not present, having waived his right to be at this deposition. Anything you want to add, Tim, or anything like that?
No, nothing to add.
Everything okay?
Yes.
All right. If we could have Dr. Wright sworn then, we'll begin his deposition.
His presence.
Yeah. We have Dr. Wright sworn. I do. Good morning, Dr. Wright.
Good morning.
If you would, state your name and spell your last name so we have it correct in the record, please.
Chadwick Lewis Wright. His last name is spelled W-R-I-G-H-T.
And how are you employed, sir?
I am employed as a radiologist and nuclear medicine physician here at The Ohio State University.
All right. You live in the Columbus area as well?
I do.
All right. Could you tell us a little bit about your educational background that enables you to work here in the radiology department?
So I attended medical school here at The Ohio State University. I then graduated medical school. I did an internship at Riverside Methodist Hospital. I then transitioned from my internship to a diagnostic radiology residency, which was also here at The Ohio State University. At that point, I then pursued a fellowship in nuclear medicine at Washington University, the Law&Crime Institute of Radiology in St. Louis, Missouri. And upon completion of that, I became employed as an attending faculty member here at The Ohio State University in August of 2012.
Okay, so you've been here about almost 6 years now.
Almost 6 years.
And you are a physician licensed to practice medicine in the state of Ohio?
Yes.
And are you board certified in any specialized fields of medicine?
I'm board certified in both radiology and nuclear medicine, so by the American Board of Radiology and the American Board of Nuclear Medicine.
All right. And what are your duties here at The Ohio State University? What types of procedures do you perform?
So my clinical obligations are specifically in nuclear medicine, so that would include PET imaging, PET CT imaging, general nuclear medicine, nuclear cardiology, and radionuclide therapy. So that would be my clinical obligations, and I also am involved with research as well.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about the PET nuclear brain scan and what that is? And is that one of the procedures you perform, or at least review?
It is. So it's going to be a fluorodeoxyglucose or an FDG PET CT brain scan. And so that is a clinical scan that we do perform here for indications of neurodegeneration, epilepsy, disorders like that.
So primarily looking for example, dementia, onset of dementia?
Predominantly the scans that we do here would be looking for dementia.
That would be your typical patient?
That would be the typical dedicated brain FDG PET patient.
Can you tell us how you go about performing that exam and what you're looking for?
So the scan itself is it takes place after the patient's been previously injected with the radioactive form of sugar. The patient is sitting usually, according to protocol, in a quiet, darkened room. They are injected with the radioactive isotope, which is, again, a radioactive form of glucose.
Can I stop you just a second? Is that called a resting protocol when you have them
the only
relaxed and quiet?
Yes. So it is a resting protocol. That is the only protocol that we perform here for dedicated brain FDG PET imaging.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay.
All right, and so what you're measuring is how the brain is functioning by using the glucose, synthesizing or metabolizing the glucose?
Yes, so we are looking at the brain's utilization of glucose with this scan. So we're imaging the entire brain, and we're looking at the areas of the brain that take up the glucose tracer that we injected.
All right. And
under the resting state.
How many of these PET scans, brain scans, have you performed in the time you've been a physician?
I would say probably 1% to 2% of my PET workload would be a dedicated brain. In terms of a number, it would be hard for me to tell you a precise number. I would say in the range of probably 50 to 100.
All right. And you do other PET scans, but you're talking when that number is about the brain scans.
Yes, I'm specifically talking about just the dedicated brain resting scans. Yes, we do between 20 to 25 whole body scans a day, which do include the brain, but those are typically done for cancer imaging purposes.
All right. And so you do this on a daily basis, perform this kind of examination?
When I'm on clinical service, yes. If I am on the PET service, I am reading these PET scans.
All right. Now, when you do a PET scan, when it's completed, do you review that scan and try to make findings?
Yes. Right. So on the day the PET scan is performed, review the images that were obtained from that PET scan, review any relevant medical records, and then dictate a report of the findings and my impression.
All right. At this time, I would tender Dr. Wright as an expert in this field, unless there's some further question you want to ask related to his qualifications.
No, I'll stipulate.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Wright, on October the 6th, 2017, were you working here at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center?
Yes.
And did he have a patient that came in by the name of Anthony Kirkland that was going to receive a PET brain scan?
As far as I can recall, yes.
Okay. And do you know how he came to be there for that scan?
Now, in retrospect, I mean, at the time I was reading the scan, I had no idea what was, the preceding history for the patient arriving.
How does a patient normally come to you?
For review?
Yes, sir.
To interpret. So there are patients who are scheduled for that day, and I typically do not see any of the patients while they're being prepared, injected, while they await for their imaging. I will only actually look at their images after the scan is complete and they've been sent to a dedicated workstation, which is in a different part of the hospital.
All right. You have technicians that do all the administering of the test.
The technologists work with the patient to administer the radioactive form of sugar and to perform the imaging.
Did you know that Anthony Kirkland was an inmate in the Department of Corrections and he'd been brought here for that test from the Department of Corrections?
I don't recall that information.
Okay, but that wouldn't be unusual, would it? You have a contract with the state if an inmate needs a procedure, they're brought here frequently?
Yes, we do have a contract to image patients for the state for corrections.
And if I asked you, did you know Anthony Kirkland? Did you know of him?
Not prior to this.
Okay. Do you know who the physician was that wrote the order for the PET scan for Anthony Kirkland?
I'd have to look at the...
Yeah, if you could, and I think...
looks like it was Dr. Joseph Wu. Yes, Dr. Joseph Wu.
All right. And did you know Dr. Wu, or did you know of Dr. Wu?
No.
Okay. Did he provide you with any specific instructions that he would like you to follow or have followed in the administration of this PET scan?
Not that I see here in the order.
Okay, I think in particular it would be on or around page 4.
Okay, so it looks like the only information provided is a diagnosis of others specified intracranial injury with loss of consciousness of 30 minutes or less, sequela.
Okay, so he's indicating that Anthony Kirkland had a head injury?
Correct, an intracranial injury.
Is that, did you presume at that point you're looking for some kind of brain injury?
That or any other possible finding. Yeah.
Did Dr. Wu give you any more specific history as to what kind of a head injury, how or when it was sustained or anything like that?
No, there was no communication with Dr. Wu by myself.
Okay. You didn't talk to him, or he didn't call you and ask you?
I did not.
It's fine. In case you're not familiar with downtown, it's a test. As far as I know, it's a test, so don't worry about it. First Wednesday. That's it? Okay.
I called him and he did not call me.
Did Dr. Wu provide or indicate to you that Anthony Kirkland had some previous brain scans, an MRI done? And if so, would you have wanted to see that, if possible?
So your first question, no, there was no information shared with me by Dr. Wu about this particular patient's case. Yes, any prior imaging or any prior history would have been useful at the time of interpretation.
If the doctor that referred this case or wrote the order for this case knew about it, it would have been helpful information for you to have.
Of course.
Okay. But you didn't have anything like that in this case?
Not at that time.
And in fact, in your report, you have a listing on your report when it's completed for comparisons, do you not?
Yes.
In this one, you had no comparisons to look at with
Correct.
the scan you had?
Correct.
Okay, okay. So Kirkland came in for this brain scan on October 6th. Did he have the PET brain scan?
The resting PET brain scan, yes.
And were there any complications in that scan that you can recall?
None that I recall.
Okay. So the scan was completed. How long would it have taken to complete?
The scan itself probably, well, from the time he was injected to the time he was finished imaging, it probably would have taken less than 90 minutes.
Okay, okay. And then when it was completed, then you would have reviewed the scan, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And you would have dictated a report, I think you said earlier?
Yes.
I think in the records in front of you, that marks States Exhibit 3, if you look at page 4 and 5, does that note the report that you dictated with regard to the PET brain scan of Anthony Kirkland?
Yes.
All right. Can you look at the findings?
Yes.
And read findings and answer, are those the findings that you made in this case?
Would you like me to read this?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the findings are: there is no suspicious focus of abnormally increased or decreased FDG uptake identified within the cerebral or cerebellar hemispheres, period. On the non-contrast enhanced CT images, there are non-specific calcifications noted within the basal ganglia, period.
All right. And can you tell us in layman's terms, what are you saying there? What do those things mean in terms that a lay juror could understand?
So essentially I saw no abnormality where there was unusually or abnormally increased glucose utilization by the brain or abnormally decreased utilization of glucose by the brain. So essentially this is from a PET standpoint, a normal appearing scan.
So that it's telling you that the brain is functioning properly?
To the best of my ability, yes.
Okay. And did you see any indication or evidence of any traumatic brain injury in the PET scan that you performed? Anything that would indicate to you that he was suffering from some traumatic brain injury?
I did not.
All right. Would you consider this a normal PET brain scan?
Yes.
All right. Did you do any kind of further analysis with regard to this, or were you finished at that point?
I performed a visual assessment, and that's the basis for my report. That's all I did.
Okay. Now, when this was completed, would a copy of the report and a copy of the scan itself have been sent to Anthony Kirkland's referring physician?
At least a copy of the report. I honestly don't know if there were instructions prior to this for a copy of the scan to be sent as well.
Okay. Nobody called you and had some follow-up questions about it or anything like that?
No one spoke with me to specifically request a copy of the report or the images.
All right. Are you familiar with Dr. Alan Waxman?
By reputation only.
Okay. And is he the head of the nuclear and radiology division at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles?
To the best of my knowledge.
You indicate you do know of his reputation in your field?
I do. I do not know Dr. Waxman personally, but I'm clearly aware of him professionally.
What is the professional reputation that Dr. Waxman has?
Oh, he's a very, very good nuclear medicine physician.
All right. Well respected.
Very well respected.
Peers?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wright. That's all the questions that I have.
Good morning, Dr. Wright.
Good morning.
I'm Tim Kutcher. I'm here with Rich Wendell. We represent Anthony Kirkland. Anthony Kirkland came to you to have a PET scan performed. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And PET stands for positron emission tomography. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And could you describe how this test is performed?
In terms of Mr. Kirkland?
Mr. Kirkland is hooked up to an IV. He gets a shot of fluorodeoxyglucose.
Correct. Yes.
Which is the tracer.
Which is the positron emitting radiotracer that we would use for this study.
Okay. And a positron is a positively charged electron, isn't it?
It is.
And it somehow
it's a positively charged particle. It's an anti-electron, but yes.
Okay. It produces antimatter.
It will interact with an electron and annihilate to produce two photons, or two essentially rays of radiation of a very specific energy level that can then be detected by the PET scanner.
Okay. Those two gamma photons are approximately 180 degrees.
At the time of annihilation, yes.
Right. And then that registers and is read by the PET scan.
It's detected by the PET scanner.
Okay. And what does it produce? Does it produce images?
The
PET scan.
The PET scan, so it provides, yes. So you would use that information to then get images that have been reconstructed from the data that were acquired during the scan.
And this data is acquired by a computer?
The scanner, but there is a computer associated with it.
Okay. And the FDG accumulates where the glucose is metabolized by positron emission.
I want to make sure I understand your question. I'm sorry. The FDG accumulates
where glucose is metabolized.
If you stop there, yes, it will accumulate in cells that are taking up glucose for the purposes of metabolism, glucose metabolism. And the last part, I wasn't quite sure.
You're trying to find what? What are you trying to find?
With glucose?
With the test.
With the test. So we're essentially looking for areas of abnormally increased or decreased glucose utilization in the tissue of interest.
The prosecutor specifically asked you if this was an at-rest test, and I believe your answer was that all tests that you run are at rest.
Correct. Our protocol is for a resting protocol.
Okay. You're aware that there are other protocols?
Up until this point, I was not aware that there were other protocols being utilized clinically.
And I believe you said you've done approximately 100 of these?
Probably.
That'd be in your entire career?
That would probably be since being an attending physician here at Ohio State.
Okay. And specifically, the typical patient is you're detecting a neurodegenerative condition?
So the indications most typically for a scan, a dedicated resting FDG PET brain, would be for Ohio State neurodegeneration, dementia.
Dementia, Alzheimer's?
Correct.
Any others?
Sometimes for seizure localization.
Is a differential diagnosis sometimes looking for cancer?
For a neurodegeneration request, or we do FDG PET CT scans for cancer imaging most frequently.
Okay.
So yes, there could be an incidental cancer found on a scan.
Those are some of the uses?
For FDG PET?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I think you explained that when the test is actually performed, it's performed by technicians.
Yes.
You're not in the room.
I'm not in the patient preparation area or in the scanner room.
You don't see the patient?
Not typically.
What you see is the result of the test done by the technologist, which is sent to a workstation in a building?
In at least a different part of the building, in a different room.
Okay. And you're looking at what the computer has created an image for you?
Correct. So we use our standard protocol to reconstruct those images, and then those would be what I would review for the purposes of a standard of care clinical report.
So would you know who Amy Dodds is?
She was a PET scheduler.
Okay. And
meaning that she would...
It says electronically signed by Amy Dodds. That'd be typical.
She was a scheduling person here that would schedule PET scans.
Okay. you say you know Dr. Waxman by?
Reputation.
And how do you know him? By reputation? From medical textbooks?
I would say predominantly from hearing him speak at professional meetings.
Okay. So you've attended meetings where he's been a speaker?
Yes.
Now, you said it would have been helpful if you would have had any prior scans, if available. When the patient is referred to you, is that a request you can make?
I don't know if that is a request that is routinely offered at the time of scheduling. And no one had asked me prior to the images arriving if I would like to have images available from a prior study. But if I had been asked, I would have said yes.
Okay. Would it have occurred to you without any information to say, are there prior records?
Without the scans?
Patients referred to you?
Correct.
Okay. Wouldn't as a physician you normally take a history if you were seeing the patient?
Yes.
Okay. Would a history be taken by somebody when a patient arrives on campus?
Typically, yes.
Okay. And wouldn't that include whether or not there had been prior scans?
So I believe that they would have typically asked if they had had prior workup, but I'm not sure they would have specifically asked for prior scans.
Okay. Would you expect the PET scan to reveal an orbital fracture?
It's possible, but it wouldn't have been on the PET scan unless it was acute.
Okay. If it was remote?
If it was remote, meaning remote trauma, the PET findings may not have indicated any abnormality.
Okay. Are there more sensitive tests than PET?
For trying to determine a remote fracture?
Yes.
Of course. You could do anatomic imaging.
Okay. I'd like to show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit, Depot Number 1 Exhibit. Ask you if you can, I know you haven't seen that before. Does it appear to be referring to Mr. Kirkland?
His name is listed.
Does it further indicate a remote fracture?
Yes, there are brackets around the sentence. A remote left medial orbital wall fracture is seen.
When you do your analysis of the information created by the computer, you do what's first called a visual analysis, is that correct?
So for my PET scan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other kind of analysis you routinely do?
A visual assessment is the assessment that I performed. In terms of, I guess I would need a better understanding of additional analysis.
Would you do any kind of statistical analysis?
No.
Are you aware of any statistical analyses protocols that exist?
I would say that there are statistical protocols that probably are available for research purposes. I'm not aware of any FDA-approved, let's say, software packages for statistical analysis for routine clinical use in PET scans.
So in this routine clinical use, you found what you've determined was a normal PET scan
Of the brain,
of the brain.
yes.
Does that mean that there couldn't have been a traumatic brain injury?
I wouldn't be able to tell you if there had been prior injury.
All you can say is right now there's no evidence of a brain injury.
At the time of the scan, there was no PET evidence for me to conclude that there had been prior brain injury.
Now, prior to your appearing here today, it was requested by the defense to be able to speak to you, and you declined that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what was the basis of your declination?
It was just a very busy time, and I did not really want to get any more involved in the case than necessary.
And that was after you had spoken to the prosecutor already?
Yes.
May we go off the record for a moment, please?
It's 12:02 p.m. Time is 12:03 p.m. We're back on the record.
Would you recognize what you do as a rapidly evolving area of medicine?
Specifically nuclear medicine?
Nuclear medicine, molecular imaging.
I would say that yes, all medical imaging, including nuclear medicine and molecular imaging, is, yes, rapidly evolving.
Okay. And have you had occasion to review any peer-reviewed articles regarding molecular imaging?
Yes.
Okay. And in those articles, do they talk about statistical analysis?
Yes.
Okay. But here at Ohio State, you said you do research. You are not doing any statistical analysis?
In research?
Yes.
Yes, I would say that in research, for research purposes, often there is statistical analysis that is necessary to be performed.
Are you doing any of that?
Yes.
Okay. How much of your time is spent researching statistical analysis?
Oh. So I do 50% of my time is research. Of that, a very small fraction, probably less than 1% of my time is spent actually applying statistics to the research that I do.
Okay. Would you agree or disagree that a PET scan is an appropriate tool for diagnosing brain injuries?
I would say that given a certain type of brain injury, it can be sensitive for the detection of brain injury, but it really depends on the mechanism of brain injury.
Finally, I see that you found non-specific calcification noted within the basal ganglia. What does that mean?
There were small calcifications in the region of the basal ganglia on the CT portion of the PET-CT study.
Okay. For jury purposes,
Of course.
where's the basal ganglia?
The basal ganglia is in the mid portion of the brain, and it's just to the right and to the left of the midline
clinically, do you expect PET scans to evolve so that it is more of a diagnostic tool?
So it's already a diagnostic tool.
If it's not, I don't want you to assume anything.
Okay.
Do you believe it to be a diagnostic tool?
Do I believe that FDG PET scans? Yes, they are a diagnostic tool for the diagnosis of cancer. They can certainly help in the diagnosis of seizure foci, dementia.
Okay, but not for brain injury.
I think that it would be possible in the future that PET can be used to try and characterize brain injury.
Right. In fact, that's what researchers are doing now, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
All right. No further questions.
I don't have any questions on redirect. Dr. Wright, this is going to conclude your deposition here today. Before we go off the record, though, let me indicate that we have a video. We'll play a trial of your testimony, and we also have a court stenographer that's taking this all down, and she'll make a transcript. Normally, you would have the opportunity to see that before it's filed, that transcript, to read over it, to make any corrections you felt need to be made, and to sign the end of it. Inasmuch as we have a trial date, a deadline, so to speak, and we do have a video, if you wish to do so, you can waive signature on that, and the court reporter will simply type the transcript and file it. What would you prefer in this case?
Can I ask my lady?
Sure.
I recommend going with it.
Okay. I will go ahead and read it then.
All right.
There's no fee associated with it, correct?
I wouldn't think so, no. Oh, what is it? I'm sorry. No. Okay.
Just making sure I've seen it.
Yeah. All right. So the court reporter will get your testimony transcribed. She will send it up for you to review. There will be a corrections page if you think something is noted wrong in the transcript than what you actually said. You can make any corrections you feel appropriate, and then you sign it, and send it back. Okay? All right, excellent. Anything else? Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
Time is 12:09 p.m. This concludes the deposition.
Thanks, Dr. Wright. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cryer. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to take care of it for the day. Give you a little chance to get off early, and I appreciate the opportunity to go do what I need to do. It's very nice of everyone. We'll come back tomorrow, 9:30. Get here around 9:20 or so, like you've been doing very, very well. We'll try to get going at 9:30. Doesn't look like it'll be a real long day tomorrow, but we'll go as far as we need to go. And then I believe, again, we can finish up the evidence on Friday and then get this case to you on Monday. Remember all the admonitions. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty to not form or express any opinion on this case until it is all finally submitted to you. Please do not watch, view, read any media reports. You're doing great with that also. We'll see you back then tomorrow at 9:20 or so back in my jury room. Thank you all very much. Have a great day. Thank you. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Before we break for the day, counsel, how about, I know most of you are here bright and early. If we could maybe get together tomorrow at 9:15 on the record and go over the jury charge. It's being retyped. I've done some things on it to sort of change some things and some of the things we talked about. I've read everything I need to read. I'm ready to make decisions regarding the requested jury instructions as well as the verdict forms. So is that okay with everybody? And Mr. Running, you're here by 8:15. Okay. We'll try to do that, and then I'll try to get Mr. Kirkland down. Obviously, he needs to be here for that. Also, there was some question at some point regarding possible evidence related to if, in fact, Mr. Kirkland renders an unsworn statement. I have read everything I think I need to read on that. And if you want to argue that also, I can certainly address that tomorrow. Okay? Anything else then from anybody? You know what? I do. I was supposed to, well, I will get them to you. Judy upstairs has typed them yesterday. It just adds a couple new things. I've not changed the other stuff, but I will certainly make sure that Chris gets those to you very shortly. I can walk up and get them myself real quick. Please? Yes, Chris will be here all day. Okay, but I was supposed to get them yesterday. I didn't go up and get them, so I'll make sure that they get down here very shortly. Okay, all right. Anything else?
I think relative to the issue on the statement, it might not be right for consideration yet.
Okay. All right.
So we may have some additional material when it does become right.
Okay. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. Thank you all again very much. See you tomorrow.